All right, let's start with something that might be hard for you to admit. You are stuck. Not because you haven't tried and not because you aren't smart enough. In fact, if anything, it might be because you are too smart, or at least that's the irony worth sitting with for a moment. Because you've done the work, whatever this thing is, the pattern at work that keeps repeating, the relationship that won't heal, the anxiety that shows up uninvited, the life that looks fine from the outside but feels strangely empty on the inside. And you've been on it. You've read the books. You've tried the approaches. You've probably arrived at appointments already knowing more about your own condition than the person sitting across from you. And that's not an exaggeration. That's just who you are. And still, it hasn't moved. Now, we live in an extraordinary moment in terms of access to information. We're inundated with it everywhere around us in this internet age. And it's become easy for anyone to become an expert at anything. And any query or question you may have can easily be answered, not just through a simple internet search, but now with artificial intelligence, the stakes have really been raised. And now it's possible for you to harness your intelligence and amplify it exponentially in ways that were unthinkable before large language models caught fire and raced ahead, manufacturing intelligence as if it came off an assembly line. So you think you know lots, and you really do. And even if you don't know, the information is literally right at your fingertips, available at a moment's notice. It means you don't even have to think for yourself, or do you? Is there a gap in there somewhere? Why does it seem that there are things you still can't figure out? And it's not the sort of thing you may be able to even admit to yourself. And yet here you are, sitting in what I call the intelligence trap. That gap between everything you know and the life that still isn't shifting. It isn't a sign that you've failed or that you need to learn more. It's actually pointing at something specific, something worth understanding, because once you see it, it changes everything. And while we may have raced ahead in terms of intelligence, it's certainly a slippery slope. And here it is, your intelligence has become its own obstacle. And that's not because intelligence is bad, but because the more capable your mind is at mapping a problem, the easier it is to mistake that map for movement. For example, the minute you turn off your computer and look around, you can see that you're still living the same life, where you live in an apartment or a house, surrounded by the same people and ultimately the same issues. Or maybe it's work problems. Maybe the issue's a coworker, or maybe it's your boss. Maybe you don't like the work you do, but you love the paycheck. Or maybe you don't love the work and you're barely making ends meet. Either way, you know what the problem is, but you still feel stuck. Or maybe you're struggling with your relationships. Now, relationships can be hard, and people are unpredictable in how they behave, and they don't always do what we want them to do. It can be so annoying and frustrating. Believe me, I know. These kinds of frustrations in our lives, especially with those closest to us, parents, kids, siblings, can seem to go on unchanged every day, month after month. These kinds of relational dissatisfactions can be the hallmark of our existence. Maybe they ebb and flow, and the effects may be tolerable, or they may really require more of us than we have to give. Regardless, this can all be very draining on our well-being and really takes its toll as time passes. Now, the understanding is real, the insight is real, but the pattern is still there, doing what it does underneath all of it. We may not even need to look outside of ourselves for our deepest struggle. They might be right where we live every day inside of ourselves, lodged within our sense of self and how we feel about ourselves. Now, low self-esteem really has the capacity to erode away at the core of who we are and lead to the creation of a life that we feel at odds with. You may even have a life that is outwardly successful, but inside you feel empty in some way. Or maybe you're filled with anxieties you can't explain or locate the source of. Now, anxieties and fears can come out of nowhere and interfere with you when you most need to be present and show up for yourself. It's like a part of you is bent on sabotaging your dreams and goals for yourself. You can trace the origins of the wound all the way back to its roots, understand every layer of it, predict exactly how it plays out, and still wake up tomorrow running the same pattern. Or maybe you're your own worst critic and somehow you're never good enough. It doesn't matter that others believe in you and see your successes. There is a set of impossible standards that you set for yourself that make it difficult to finish projects or cause you to falter on the small details. Now, you may be able to hide this from others, but you know that as soon as you are with yourself, that sense of inadequacy is with you. It may be that your body is failing you in some way. With all the emphasis on intelligence, it is easy to neglect the body and its basic needs. Not eating properly or regularly, not moving or exercising, and not sleeping enough are so many of the ways that we can fall short of basic expectations. But the real confusion starts when something in the body goes wrong and you have no idea what to do about it. The understanding is real, the insight is real, but the pattern is still there, doing what it does underneath all of it. So yes, you are intelligent and becoming more so. It's possible to be an expert now on just about anything, and you've developed a great toolbox and skill set. It serves you well, and there's lots of success to show for it. But the evolutionary gap that you're experiencing lies in the more mundane, relational, and biological aspects of who you are. And to give your intelligence due credit, you already know a lot about what is wrong with you and when it started. You've been tracking its manifestations and progress diligently. And like Sherlock, you've been on the trail, you have got all the clues, but the solution is just not presenting itself in any clear form or fashion that feels coherent to be considered a total solution. And your ability to synthesize all the information means you know more about what you're dealing with than anyone you turn to for help. To be fair, you've had some successes, but they didn't last or only answered part of the problem. So you're still left searching for answers that would lead to wellness or a return at least to your baseline. Then there's the exhaustion that comes from doing too much, and also from carrying something that somehow never seems to put itself down. And now it's gotten to the point that the more you know, the less you know, and you have to confide in yourself that, yes, you are stuck. All the information around you has become a sophisticated obstacle, and like the bright, shiny object that promised something more, there's still something missing. So pause. Why is it like this? All the mental clarity, but a part of reality feels totally obscured and inaccessible. And in that gap, you aren't sure what comes next. The more you know, the less it seems to help. The information that was supposed to free you has started to feel like its own kind of maze. It is because healing and deep fulfillment in life don't happen at the level of understanding. Reality is a pattern made up of intersecting energetic frequencies that interact together, and it requires a different level of awareness to access it, to access the root cause. And while you can mentally map out your trauma and know everything about it, you have not altered the pattern of how it manifests in your life. If it is still sitting in the tissues of your body or your psycho-emotional self, that's because the mind that recognizes the problem is not the actual problem. And I want you to know that thought is not a sign of failure. But here's the crux. Understanding a pattern and interrupting a pattern are two completely different things. So when you cease the inquiry long enough to take that in, a shift is possible. The problem is you can't think your way to that felt shift, and that is where good people are trapped. That is the place where, in your quiet moments, you say to yourself, I know exactly what this is. I've known for years. Why isn't this moving? And the job going forward isn't for you to understand more, but to locate where in your system that pattern is still running beneath your conscious awareness. The mind that can identify a wound so clearly is not the same mechanism that heals it, because healing doesn't happen at the level of understanding. It happens deeper in the body, in the nervous system, in the parts of you that hold the pattern in ways that words and insights simply don't reach. You can know everything about a trauma and still be living inside it, because knowing it and shifting the frequency at which it runs are not the same act. The pattern was never just a thought. It lives across every layer of who you are, emotional, physical, energetic, spiritual, and it needs to be met at all of those levels at once, not just the cognitive one. Now here's something I'd like you to try. This week, pick one thing that you're desirous of changing and make it something that you understand so completely. The issue you have mapped the most thoroughly, tracked the longest, and can explain with the most precision. Now notice, has that understanding changed it? Not helped you cope with it, not given you language or new awareness for it, but actually moved it. If the answer is honest and it is no, you have just found the exact location of the trap. The understanding is real, the insight is real, and the pattern is still running underneath all of it, completely undisturbed by everything you know about it. And that's the gap between knowing and shifting. It's not a failure of intelligence or even a failure of you. It's just the wrong tool for this particular job. And noticing it clearly without trying to think your way out of it is the first move that's actually different from anything you've tried before. And to reiterate, the pattern was never just a thought. It lives across every layer of who you are, and it needs to be met at all of those levels at once, not just the cognitive one. Now, the work that I do with the lensing of energy working through astrology collapses pattern recognition into a whole. And what we're talking about is a precise, living map of the energetic patterns that have been shaping your life. Where they began, how they connect to each other, where they are still running quietly beneath everything you consciously know about yourself. And working at this level does something that years of fragmented self-inquiry often can't. It brings the whole picture into coherence at once, across every level of your being, because that's where the pattern actually lives. Now you don't need more information. You need the pattern located and then interrupted. And that's what this work does, and that's where we're headed. So if you're interested to know more, please check out the links below.